Okay, welcome to the sponsor session. So thanks to our great sponsors, we have this conference free to attend, which I believe the audience like very much. So our gold sponsor is Dimensions this year, and they also joined us in the first year of the conference as well. Also, the MDPI journal information is with us for the second year, as well as Shock Project, who also provided some small grant for organization of their workshop. And the LIBNOVA is the new one member of the sponsor team, and hopefully, of course, we will collaborate with them also in the future. So after this sponsor session, we will have a post-session quiz with 500 euros prize award for the winner. So I would like to invite you to be present at this sponsor session, to listen carefully, because all questions will be related to the presentations, and of course wish you a good luck in the quiz as well. The point of the quiz will be to be, quick and accurate, meaning that if you have more than one participants with the same number of correct responses, then the time will decide who is the winner. Last year it was, I think, 8 out of 9 questions was the winner, and this year we have 10 questions. Okay, and the first sponsor which will be presented is Dimensions as our gold sponsor. I will just briefly introduce Chris. I already introduced her to this morning for the workshop. So Chris is the digital solution specialist for Altmetric and Dimensions, working with universities and research institutes to leverage their strategy around research communication and research assessment. Before joining digital science and the Altmetric team, Chris used to be a medical librarian focused on the responsible use of metrics, delivering trainings for all library resources and organizing science-focused events. So Chris, the floor is yours. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And you have 20 minutes for your presentation.
That is more than enough, actually. Let me switch to present mode. So first of all, thank you again all for joining me today. I've been poking around at some of the presentations and they've been super interesting. So thank you all for doing that and for the organizers as well. So I'm Chris, I'm a product specialist. What that means is that I get to work with universities and corporates and other organizations that either produce or need research in their day-to-day activity to find the best way of using and leveraging data in general. And you can reach me either through this email address or on Twitter. Feel free to reach out for any questions, debates, ideas, things that you would want just a second head for. I'll be happy to talk about digital science. So digital science is a sort of an incubator, really, for small companies that want to change the way either research is done or assessed, or provide platforms for research-related content. So for example, Altmetric looks at non-traditional attention to research. So if a publication has been mentioned in the media or on Twitter or on Facebook, but also in patents or in policy documents. So all of this type of non-citation type information that you really need, especially when you're building research communication strategies, for example. And then there are other companies like Figshare, where you can add all of your research related information. So all of your data sets, if you have 3D images or renders, everything can go in Figshare, on Figshare. And of course you can get the DOI for it. The only one here that is really not a company is Dimensions. Because Dimensions is a product of multiple of these companies working together. And the goal of it is to help and empower the users to kind of drill down into the data that they need. And I was mentioning in the morning as well that literally we are awash with data. Everything you do, every step you make creates a data point. but how do you make the most use of it? And if even a few years ago, universities, particularly university libraries, had one, maybe two databases, now there are way more than that, and each of them with a different language, each of them with different rules of working together. So how do you make sense of all that? And of course, there's also the question of that we want to build a sustainable future, right? But we cannot build it by ourselves. So each individual university or each individual library, that's not really possible. So we need to come together and we need to work together, whether we talk about academia, but also corporates, and also our own individual people that are not part of any of these, to make the best use of resources, but also trying to understand the data that lives out there, so we can make the best possible decisions for ourselves as well as for the future. Um, and Dimensions really is just that. It's a database that brings together data about publications, about grants, about patents, clinical trials, policy documents, as well as some altmetric information, brings it all together and try and link it, so you don't have to go into a patent database and then to a clinical trials database and then multiple publications databases. We try and bring it all together so you can focus on creating analyses and bringing out the value out of that data, rather than just try and piece together data from everywhere. And these are just some examples of the analysis that we're making and putting together. This is literally my day-to-day job, which is probably why it's so exciting to talk about. But for example, you can look at the trends or the focus of particular research. So this is based on COVID-19 data set, the same one that we used in the morning for a workshop, but this time we leverage concepts. So using concepts to see if over time there's a change in focus. And when we're talking about something that is as important as world reaching as COVID-19, with the amount of publications, but also patents and grants that have been awarded for that particular topic, time is of the essence, right? So you can just look at when a particular publication appeared, when has a particular patent been filed, and map the concepts or the categorizations assigned, and see if there are any changes in those publications or other types of data as well. Or you can look from the perspective of, again, also from a concept perspective or keyword perspective. Which are those particular ones that have just appeared in the literature? And of course, edge computing is not a new word by no means, but for the analysis that I have put together, and there were some additional parameters in place, it was the first time that they appeared. So just to not use the exact example or the analysis that this has been used for, let's say that in the field of materials engineering, edge computing hadn't been used before, but now if you map them out and you have full control over the data, then you can just get these types of insights. Just like you can see, for example, in all of the research around cloud computing, there is a lot of focus on security or fog computing and some other topics, but not necessarily on the providers, which gives you just a different type of insight as well. And this is just the last one. So as I mentioned, I really didn't need all of the 20 minutes, but I'm hoping that most of this would become a conversation, because I really like to hear your feedback. So how are you using data? What kind of challenges have you found along the way? And I'm hoping that the remaining time would also just give us the chance to have that type of conversation. Back to the last slide. So when we're talking about research assessment, having full control of the data that isn't just limited to publications or just to patents or any of these, but linked together, it also gives you the freedom to be creative about the metrics that you use. So this is one example where two universities are being, I wouldn't say assessed, but you can look at the cost of a publication that ends up being mentioned in a patent. And the way this has been done is to look at all of the publications that have been funded and the actual awarded amounts that have been assigned, so the actual grants and the value of those grants that have resulted in publications. And some of those publications have been mentioned in patents. Of course, this is a very rudimentary type of analysis because the patents have their own kind of list of what makes them important. So you can add that, but literally instantly you can see, for example, that in biological sciences for university one, it is way more expensive to have a publication mentioned in a patent. So the translation from a publication into intellectual property just takes more money. And then you can look into why, right? What are the causes? What is going on? But if you don't have the tools to even ask that question to begin with, then you will never see something like this. And now my question is, do you even think this is interesting? Because of course it is for me, but that is my job, right? But I would really like to hear your feedback and your thoughts on this, and also how you deal with all of the data that is around you. Thank you.
Okay, you already hear the invitation from Chris to join the discussion. So we have 10 minutes more for this part of the program for dimensions. So if you have any question or any reaction of what just Chris asked you, please do not hesitate just to raise your hand or write anything in the chat, or write any impression about the digital science as organizations or dimension as one part of this organization and its role in the changing world of the science, let's say.
Oh yeah, those are fantastic questions. Thank you. I would love to hear answers to all of those. And one thing that I forgot to mention is that digital science was founded in 2009, and I guess you will figure out why I had to mention that in a few minutes. No questions. Well, that must have been a very boring presentation on my side.
I don't think so. We will see. Maybe we can give you a couple of moments more for people to ask something. Yeah, we have one raised hand. Let me see, from Pantelis.
Hi, I would like, from the presentation, my understanding was that this is mostly oriented to the administration of research facilities. Is there any, from the perspective of the individual researcher, how do you see using the services?
Oh, that is a great question. Thank you. So when it comes to dimensions, the user interface itself can be useful, just because you have all of the information there. So you can just use it for research discovery. You can also use it to find just to understand the grants landscape. Let me just go into dimensions. So this is what the full user interface looks like. There is a free version of it. So the publications and the data sets, they're made freely available. And there are a few different ways that you can use it. So you can use it for keyword searches, but you can also use it for probably what is one of my favorite things to do, the abstract search. So what this does is a similarity type search. It maps out similar publications. And if you're using the full database, grants, patents, and clinical trials as well. If you are an early career researcher, you can use this to see where have similar publications been published, and some information about the impact of those publications. So information about citations and the FCR, which is the field citation ratio, and that's our field weighted metric. And if you use the full database, then you have the grants as well. So you can see, you can paste in there, not necessarily an existing abstract, but the abstract that you plan on sending and applying for that grant, and see where have similar grants already been awarded, And if they're very similar to your original idea, then the chances of getting that grant are slim or minimum. So it's easy to use this type of abstract search to just find similar publications or similar grants and try and capture what is going on in the world of research. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Also, Chris, I heard that it's possible in Dimensions to define your own metric, let's say. So you now open this dialogue that you can select some of the metrics. Is it possible somehow, to customize that and somehow to conduct some, let's say, bibliometric research, meaning that I introduce some new metric and apply that on some data? Is it possible somehow through the user interface? Or
not in the user interface, but this is really like my favorite thing to do. In the user interface, whatever is deployed would be deployed for the mass users of all of the millions of users of the user interface. But I need to go back to the publications. But we do have an example of the custom metric. So the RCR is a metric that we've developed together with the NIH in the US. It is very much a custom type metric. But when it comes to analysis or individual analysis, just things like this. So the cost per patent, the cost of publications mentioned in a patent, I could argue that this is also a sort of metric, especially if you normalize it per field, if you have your global average or a regional average, and then you see if you're above or beyond that average as well. But I use BigQuery here. You could use the API as well, although it will take a bit longer with the API. But there are also other things that you could do there as well. So yeah, by all means, please get creative when it comes to metrics.
yeah, interesting. Yeah, maybe you will listen a little bit later. I will also present a little bit Science to Zero Alliance in this session, and we'll talk about 1 hour initiative. We are trying to, let's say, submit a cost action proposal on the topic of different metrics. And maybe you will find that interesting also from the point of view of dimensions. So one of the ideas, let's say, to write some notations for some actionable language in which you can express how some metrics should be calculated. So it would be nice that we have some standard for expressing the metrics, including its calculation. And that standard is, let's say, adopted and implemented by various sources, including Dimensions or some other citation databases. And then we can, through some API, send, our query completely in that language expressed, and then that you can calculate that and return us back. That you are not just returning everything back to us, and then it's up to us how we are going to calculate new metrics that we can somehow express directly over your API that we need something. But as I said, a little bit later, I will just say a couple of words about that initiative. So maybe you'll be fine.
That sounds very interesting. Thank you. I will absolutely join that.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether, organizations are so willing to join the cost action. Maybe you heard for the cost program, but you're also very welcome, of course, to join the initiative and, to be one of the subscriber or something like that.
I'll definitely look into it because it sounds familiar, but then I wouldn't rely on my memory ever.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so do we have any other question from the audience before we go further to the next sponsor, which is LIBNOVA? Anyway, of course, if you have any questions, just, drop an email to the official email of the conference. We will be happy, of course, to contact you with Chris, or if you remember the Chris email, or you can Google it, I suppose. Then you can contact Christina directly and ask any question.
There are some advantages to being the only one on the internet with my name.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, to have the unique name. Yeah.
But thank you, everyone, and looking forward to kind of picking your brain as the conference advances. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. And we are going further. I'm going to introduce the next presenter, which is Tio Redondo. He's a representative of LIBNOVA, and he's currently the CTO and head of research and development at LIBNOVA, where he leads several innovation projects about digital preservation solutions for libraries, archives, and museums, and research institutions, and also leads LIBNOVA research labs for the areas of future functionalities, most around implementing artificial intelligence techniques for better handling of research data and content. So I wish welcome LIBNOVA to the sponsor session, first of all, and welcome to the sponsors team. And I hope we will collaborate as well in the future. So Theo, you have 10 minutes for your presentations to briefly present LIBNOVA as organizations and what is the benefit of the community from this organization, of course. I will stop sharing my screen, then you can start.
Let me share my screen.
And is it Theo or Theo? Sorry if I wrongly pronounced your name.
Theo or Theo,
Okay.
it works either way. Can you see my screen?
Yes, but you didn't start the presentation mode yet. I mean, it's you didn't start the presentation. We can see your PowerPoint as a program. Yeah, that's
okay. It took some seconds. Okay, thank you for the opportunity, and yes, we are very interested in keeping this relationship for the future, as we see this as an excellent platform for communication and interaction with the research community, especially on the social sciences and the humanities. So I'm going to be very brief about what we are and what we are doing and how we can help some institutions for the research, data management, and preservation needs that they may have. So this presentation is divided into these four elements: with who we are, and the specific part, which is LIBNOVA Research Labs, which, as has been mentioned, is the research area for the company. Some of the research data challenges that we have detected either from managers and researchers, the practitioners, and we have collected this intelligence and we have put it into the product, which is LabDrive, which I would just mention very briefly. And then our involvement in data management, plan management, intervention in Horizon Europe projects on or some of the other research initiatives in Europe. So just being very brief, we are right now present in 14 different countries, both in Europe, South America, and North America. Here you have just a brief collection of the current customers. In some of these, we have a very well-established relationship. In some others, we are just deploying the first product. And on the other side, on the left, and the right side, you have the LIBNOVA Research Lab, and we are having partnership with several organizations, the DPC and the ESA, and some of in some projects with funding from the European Commission. LIBNOVA technology is used by some of the most demanding organizations worldwide, some very big organizations, and we manage petabytes of data from all types of data, whether this is text-based documents or research files, and everything is covered by our technology. And preservation, of course, for the long term. We cover short term, but we are here for the next 100 years. So very briefly, things that we have detected in the market, and this is the comparing the research and the manager perspective, which sometimes is the same, sometimes is different, and this is based on feedback, collected feedback that we receive from 50 plus research organizations, both in Europe and the States, and also the archival project that we are involved right now. So from the researcher's perspective, we have, for instance, that there's no unified view about research data. digital preservation is only addressed at the very end of the project, not as part of the development of the project. The data structure and the software are cutting edge, and they are typically separate, and the code and data are not together. So everyone familiar with software tools, you know that every year, every 2 years, you have a new version with different things, and sometimes formats are not kept. Comparing that with the manager's perspective, there's also a risk associated with the data management to be reduced. The weight of data management plans and the project code estimates is increasing, especially when you are applying for some grant proposals. The adoption by the researchers cannot be measured, or is difficult to measure, tracked, and then operate on that. And there's also a new concern about the environmental impact of the research. With LabDrive, which is the product that we propose for this for managing research data sets, you have all the research in the whole life cycle, from the beginning, from the planning, the execution, and the conclusions. You have the research data all in one single platform. We often find that many people spread their different tools, and they use these different tools, and there's a problem of synchronization, or accessing is limited for some people. And also you follow some good practices, and you are compliant, and you manage the risk at any time. So LabDrive is also aligned with the standards in the preservation area, where you have ISO 16363, you have the fair and trust principles, you have OAIS, and you have some of the openest formats, and which are the de facto standards that are used here. Just to show you how we can help, this is from Manjula Patel several years ago, and this is the map of the different research, archive actions, administrative actions. So just to show you how we can help, we focus on both the research actions and also the archive process. So we can go back to the previous research and compare with the new research. Some of the core capacities that we provide with the product is automation with code. So you have the data and the code together, so you keep both things at the same time. You have virtualized storage. You are not bound by on-prem or obsolete storage infrastructure, so you can choose whatever is best fit for your needs. You have metadata and discovery. You have the templates. You can import and export, and you can modify or enrich the metadata schemas as you need. You have multi-protocol file sharing, so there's no need to just select one single one. You have the generation, and this is particular for managers, smart reports, where you can have how the research project is evolving. And then you have federated access. In many cases, we have that the situation where all the institutions involved in a project, in a research project, have their own affiliation with their specific institutions, but they need to have a collective view. So LIBNOVA is both a solution provider and a research partner. So focusing on what our intentions for Horizon Europe, and especially the open science part, is that we can provide either as a company and we can provide these tools. So all the research data management plans are appropriately addressed. And especially because part of the conditions for the Horizon Europe, the specific Article 10 and Article 13, they focus on having full control about the data that is generated and managed during that project. And without anything else to complete here, just here you have our contact. So if there's any question right now, or if there's something coming up in the future, we are open to hear and collaborate with all of you. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a couple of minutes, I believe, for some questions if you have from the audience. This was presentation of interest for me, to be honest, and I think that it's really true that usually preservations is going at the end of the project, unfortunately, and somehow the complete open science paradigm, that's my personal impression, is related to the opening of the final product of the research. Somehow, at the moment, I think the complete research is not opened from the first phase of the research, somehow from the idea. Of course, it's not just a technical limitations, I think, at the moment. There is also some fear in the research community that some idea can be stealed if it's open from the beginning and so on. But I believe there could be a lot of benefits in opening of the research from the first phase, meaning that you can, when you have some idea, to publish that idea somewhere, then to collect feedback from the community, to that someone can join you in your team to implement that idea and so on. And there is one question here in Q&A from Carol Gobel. How does this relate to GitHub? So do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, well, and GitHub and GitLab and several other code repository initiatives and also document initiatives don't have the preservation side as part of their definition. They are more for live collaboration, especially for team collaboration. But here we are talking about the data sets, not necessarily only the tools, and also all the products that come out of that. For instance, you have in all the research project, you have a lot of deliverables and a lot of tooling that you have to create, and this tool will help you manage that. So they are different in their nature and the purpose.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the response. I hope that Carol is satisfied with the response. Do we have any other question before we go further with the you already heard during this presentation, and it's currently shared at the screen. They are the contacts of Theo and Maria. So if you have any question, of course, you can contact them via email, of course, after this presentation.
Yeah, we're open to anything. So
Hello,
feel
Maria.
free. Thank you.
Okay, then we are going further with the program. And the next should be the presentation of the MDPI, which is the general sponsor of our the Best Paper Award. And unfortunately, I received the excuse of absence from the Xue Chang, and I'm going to present this on behalf of her. I believe it will be more effective that Xue presented that, taking into account that I'm not an employee in MDPI publisher or neither a member of editorial board of the information journal, but I will give my best to at least present what I have from the information which I received by email from Xue. So MDPI is a publisher. It's a pioneer in scholarly open access publishing and support academic communities since 1996. Originally, it's based in Basel in Switzerland, but I would say that it's a global publisher. And MDPI has the mission to foster open scientific exchange in all forms across all disciplines. There are 345 diverse peer-reviewed open access journals, supported more than 82,000 academic editors. So it's a really huge pool of editors and quite a big number of journals, and all of those journals are open access. It doesn't mean that there is no APC, meaning article processing charge, so it's free for readers, but it's not free for publishing, for the authors. And the MDPI publisher serves scholars from around the world to ensure the latest research is freely available and all content is distributed under a Creative Commons attribution license. So as I said, it's free for downloading and reading, but it's not free of charge for publishing. And there is one journal in those 345 journals of MDPI called Information. Here is the link to this journal, but you can very easily Google for it. Just type Information and MDPI. Aim and the scope of this journal is information technology, information security, information society, information systems, communication and information theory, computing science, data management, data mining, information and its applications, information and knowledge management. It's also, as all other MDPI journals, open access journal with quite short reviewing process. In average, it's 20 days from submission to the first decision. And I would say it's with quite a big Scopus site score. For the last year, it was 3.0, meaning in average, one paper published in this journal is 3 times cited according to the Scopus citation database. Here is the source for that information also, this website, this slide. And so MDPI as a publisher and information as one journal of this publishing by this publisher is our sponsor of ICT-SSH conference, and they are general sponsor of our the best paper ceremony, meaning they provided us the complete, they're covering complete price, which is 1,000 euros for the winner, for the presenters of the best paper. That voting for the best paper will be organized tomorrow. You will be informed. You will receive the email to the Google form where you can vote for the best paper from your point of view. You can vote just for one paper, and the paper with the most votes will be the winner at the end of this election. Besides that, the information journal will publish a special issue on ICT and enhanced social science and humanities. The deadline for submission of a contribution is 1st of December. You can find here also the link. I will going to post that in the chat after my presentation. As I said, it's open access journal, but the publishing is not free. There is a APC, article processing charge, which is 1,400 or around 1,300 euros. But luckily there is the discount for the conference papers, which is 25%, and it's free of charge for 3 best papers. So besides providing us the grant for covering the best paper award of 1,000 euros, they also providing us the 25% discount for the papers from the conference and free of charge APC for 3 best papers. So tomorrow, when you are voting for the best paper, the 3 papers with the highest number of votes will be free of charge for publishing of extension version of the paper in this special issue. And for the rest of the papers presented at the conference, there will be a discount of 25%. Unfortunately, for others who are not part of the conference, who didn't publish, who didn't present it here, the paper, there is only the full price. Okay, do you have any questions maybe related to MDPI as organization and as publisher and information as a journal? Yes, there is one comment in the chat. Why don't you send the link to our mails? Yes, the links will be also sent to your emails after the conference. So after the conference, you will receive one email with the post-conference information, including the information about the special issue and the deadline for the special issue, price for the APC, and so on. So you will receive that also via email. And then again, it's my turn to say a couple of words about the organizer of this conference. Last year, I said a couple of words about the organizer of this year in the introduction or opening session. And this year we decided to say a couple of words about the organization or organizer of this conference in this sponsor session, because somehow we are all also contributed to the organization of this conference. So Science 2.0 Alliance is an association of individual members and organizations interested in the research challenges related to Science 2.0, development of Science 2.0 tools and its application in research, meaning it's those tools include some Web 2.0 based tools for the development of science. And here's the sentence that it's an association of individual members and organizations, but at the moment we are not big organizations. That's the idea of what it should be actually. And we would really like that this alliance belongs to the community. It should be just the organizer community. It's not the idea to be profitable or something as that, as well as this conference. So the idea also of this conference is to bring the community together. And that should be the main benefit of organizing this conference. The idea is not to be profitable, because if we increase in the forthcoming years the incomes from the, for instance, sponsors or whatever, from donations for our organizations, whatever, we'll probably also increase the prize award for the best paper or for the ICT quiz winner and so on. So the idea is just, to make the event attractive, to gather people together to this conference, hopefully one day in a physical event, and then to start working together. So the idea of the organization is to develop and promote Science 2.0 through a couple of instruments, let's say. One is to organize and promotion, an organization and promotion of events, meaning webinars, conferences, workshops, and trainings. And this is one of those conferences, ICT SSH. But we are also open for some other conferences. But as I said, we are lacking people, meaning if someone is willing to organize some conference, can contact us, but should be ready also to be part of the organization board for that conference. Also, after this conference, in that post-conference information, you will get the invitation to join us, meaning in this conference, to join the program board if you are interested, or organization board if you're interested, also to suggest what can be improved in this conference, and so on. Besides organizing some events, we would like also to run some projects in this field. Our idea is to try to organize a cost action. The topic should be Symptometrics 2.0, and it will be on my next slides. So I will say a couple of words more about that. And the third, let's say, instrument might be that at least at the Science 2.0 Alliance website, we can create some web directory of useful resources for Science 2.0. So to create one directory, let's say. So I already mentioned what is Science 2.0. So Science 2.0 presents the new generation of online-based tools for scientists, allowing easier data sharing, collaboration, communication, and publishing. There is also the discussion whether we are already in Science 3.0 at the moment, actually, but it's a philosophical question also as well. So Science 2.0 places an emphasis on the following questions: how do the rapid development of the internet and the expansion of social networks change the working habits of researchers and research and publication processes in different research disciplines? How can Science 2.0 tools improve research processes? How do researchers use new Science 2.0 tools to facilitate new scientific communication within the research community and between the public and the research community? So there is also that trend today about the citizen science, involvement of the citizens in the scientific process. Also, I believe that communication with the taxpayers are much improved in the last years. So as I mentioned, the first idea for some project is related to the Symptometrics 2.0 or Web 2.0 based research impact metrics. So the open science paradigm, digitalization, interdisciplinarity, and internalization has significantly changed the research process, collaboration, dissemination, and impact of scholarly work in the last couple of decades. Assessment of impact of the research should include new metrics based on Web 2.0 channels. So in the past, it was only how many times you have been cited. But now, There is also the number of downloads, the number of mentions on social networks, the number of readings, the number of usage of your software or your data sets. Sometimes it's not cited appropriately, sometimes it's somehow in different way recognized. We have also altmetrics and so on. So somehow the impact of research can be measured in different ways, and the impact of research is also today, I believe, somehow open to the community outside of the scientific community as well. So there could be some impact to the citizens, not just to the scientific community. And Centometrics 2.0 as a term, which represents Centometrics based on Web based on Web 2.0, is a more than 10 years old paradigm. So we didn't, invent that term. It exists for more than 10 years, but it's still not well adopted. There are still some fears, of course, and some challenges why it can't be used in science of science, why it's not reliable source, and so on. So therefore, some plan or roadmap for transition to Centometrics 2.0 is needed, and that's the idea of this cost action. So just to remind you, maybe you have never been involved in some cost action. There is, it's a networking project, not a research project. So you can be funded for traveling, for networking, for organization of some meetings, but you can. There is no, honorarium fee for your research. And the plan for this cost action is, let's say, to dealing with the challenges of new research impact metrics, such as heterogeneity of the sources, comprehensiveness of metrics data sources, different levels of metrics data qualities, possibilities of some gaming with this metrics data. So whether someone can, produce more likes and more mentions on social networks, as well as it's possible, to game with the, citations. It's also possible, of course, to game with new metrics. If you want to join the cost action, we can send the link to you where you can write your name, and we will contact you soon. The idea is to submit that proposal in the October this year. And also for majority of European countries, I think for all European countries actually, the all cost of traveling are covered by this program. Of course, the acceptance rate is not so high, so this is just proposal. We will see whether it will be accepted or not. But also there is some, I think, possibilities that people outside of Europe join the cost action and could also enjoy some benefits. So as I said, so we are a non-profit organization. Please join us. The idea is not to be profitable. The idea is really to organize the community, which is not yet in place. One attempt is this conference. The second attempt will be this cost action. So join us. Of course, if you are able, you can provide some donation to us, or you can just, participate in our events, or as I mentioned in this initiative for the cost action. Before I introduce the next speaker, which should be Daniela Duca, I'm going just to check whether there is some question for me here in chat box or in Q&A. Is there anything for sending a workshop proposal there? I'm not sure whether it's a question for the cost action. So for the conference, there is a call for workshops, which is usually published in September or October. As part of cost action. So for the cost action, it will be submitted in October. We will receive the result of the review, I think, next spring. The cost action in the best case, in best scenario, can start in the October 2022. And as a part of the cost action, it's possible to organize the workshops, the events, and even to cover cost of traveling for some participants. And there is a question for this, I suppose, for this MDPI. Please, can you confirm whether or not this publisher is a real or predatory publishers? From my experience, it's a real publisher, but I suppose it depends also on the journal. So I'm not sure you can classify the complete publisher to be a real predatory. I think it depends on the journal and its, local policy and so on. But I believe it's a real publisher. So in the other case, I wouldn't, collaborate, of course, with wouldn't allow to be part of this conference, that I don't believe it's a real publisher. And just to check in Q&A, no, there is not any more question for me. So then now it's a time for Daniela Duca to present Sage Publishing and Ocean. So Daniela, you can start turning on your camera and unmuting yourself. I will just briefly introduce you. Daniela develops new products for computational social scientists and works with startups to help them bring their tools to market. Before joining Sage, she was a product manager for research data services and designed a program offering innovation grants for researchers working with publishers on new software solutions. She's also a visual artist with experience in financial technology and a PhD in innovation management. So Daniela, you have 10 minutes. I will stop sharing my screen and you can start sharing your screen and present your organization.
So I'm going to share my screen and see if I can do that swiftly. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, very well.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you really for introducing me, and it's a real pleasure to be here again and to talk to you a little bit about our efforts to fund tools and software for the social sciences. So I guess always the question we're getting, why we as a publisher would want to do this. We've always had a strong aspiration to support social science researchers. So our founder, Sarah Miller-McCune, she truly believed that if social science researchers are successful, then we would be too. And that is why she established and developed this company with a culture to support innovation for social research. So we all know that social scientists have used technology since it came about, and more recently with the growth of digitally born data and sort of the ubiquity of computation, software is really essential in the social sciences. So we ran a survey in 2019 to following the schema from the Software Sustainability Institute to find out what type of software or what social science researchers think about software. And about 85% use software very frequently. We did have just 149 responses. But we also found that at least 10% are developing their own research software. And you might think this is small, but actually it's quite similar to what you find on average in other disciplines. In the same year, we wrote a white paper with the highlights from around 400 tools that we've looked at. So tools meaning software packages, applications, and so on. I really continue to track these tools, and there's a link in there. I'll share it in the chat. It's on GitHub, it's public domain, you can reuse it. We have just over 500 and something at the moment. The list, is there. Right, so I did mention that for tools, we looked at anything, including locally installed applications, so even things developed in the 60s that are still working today, and I was quite surprised. Up to really fully developed infrastructure. So there was a recent paper on tools in software and research reproducibility of software, and I really like this a little image that describes kind of what the life cycle, I guess, of tools. So from a bit of code that's barely repeatable to something that's more of a tool after it's been published about to a full infrastructure and so on. So we in our list, I guess we have almost everything. So we also focused specifically on methods. So for data collection and analysis, from really data collection from anywhere online or from actual participants or institutions and libraries. And one of the things we try to do, obviously, but the list is huge, but still not very comprehensive. So I've tried to look at individual areas as I've gone through in more detail. And one of the areas that I've researched was text mining. I found just over 100 tools and packages in the space, as early as the 80s and as recent as this year. But this software supports researchers either with coding skills, so you can think about transformers and anything developed for R or Python, or without coding skills. And there are some tools that help you do quite intense, I'd say, or robust statistical analysis of text without needing to know any code. We've uncovered one area that was given not very little, but not a lot of attention, especially for researchers that coding might not be their strong skill. And that is why it was critical for them to spend less time on that part of the process, which is cleaning and preparing their corpus for analysis. We found that academics were taking 6 to 8 times longer to clean their text before they got to the part that they could actually enjoy, which is and publish about, which is the analysis. So now we are building a tool to help reduce that time. It's in beta. I have a link in there which I can share as well. You can try it out. It works with one document at a time, but hopefully gives you a good idea of what we're trying to do. So we've also collected other types of data about the tools, like who developed the tools, how they're getting funded. This bar chart may be a little bit misleading because it looks like the majority of the tools are coming from the private sector, but actually there are the rest of the tools really are developed either by university or individual side projects by researchers and developers. A growing number, even though it's small, 12 in here, but this is growing, are supported by a consortia of institutions like the Centre of Science, Nectar in Australia, the European CESDAN area. So there are other disciplinary networks and foundations that support software in different ways. For example, I don't know if you've heard about Pelagios Network. NumFocus looks at sort of like fiscal support. You know about the Software Sustainability Institute in the UK, Social Media Research Foundation that focuses specifically around social media. And I've also started to track actually, this is due to one of the very common questions I was getting, which is, well, about the open source type of tools, what is the most common license? I do not have a lot of data on it. Maybe I've looked at about 60 so far, but yeah, this is not conclusive. But from what I've seen and where the software does have a license noted, and not just like open source, then it's either MIT or Apache that seem to be the popular right now. But ask me in a couple of months. The other thing that I've tried to see is the tools that are successful or what makes them successful. And if we look at the ones that are open source or free, there's always a team or an individual that's dedicated to fully raising the funds. And sometimes it happens that they can raise up to 6 million. Always, when applicable beyond academia, they're always backed by a growing and large community of users and contributors, which, let me tell you, is not an easy feat. And sometimes they also sell a component or commercialize part of the tool itself to support the development of the tool in its full. So these are some of the foundations that provide funding or some type of funding for tools for research. For the commercial applications, many of them do start in academia or with an academic case study, but they're almost always applicable beyond academia. And they raise loads of money from known venture capitalists. They always have big brand clients, and they always have someone on their founding team that has some business background, either from the beginning or they get someone in to then grow the tool or the business beyond higher education. So we also fund tools, and we just actually we just finished the deadline for this year's concept grants just passed in May, and we've had about 113 submissions. We are in the process of shortlisting, and we will sort of let you know, but do watch out. We run these every year, and last year we've had Nosy, and that one. It's a consent management tool. It's pretty sweet. I'd encourage you to have a look, because the users that give consent can also track what they've given consent to, and retrieve it if they, or retract it if they want to, and everyone gets informed. And so it's pretty sweet. So what I'll say is that our concept grants, we have two tranches. One is to scale up, so we give one grant of 50,000. To scale up, you need to have a prototype, and some users, or even if you just have users within your group, they need to be able to. You need to be able to show it. So to get anyone, essentially, if anyone wants to try it, they should be able to from your target user group. And then we have about 5 grants that we give for new ideas. So if you had an idea but you don't have a prototype or nothing yet but want to test out that concept, then we give a small grant for you to try that out. And yes, that is me, and you can definitely contact me with questions.
Thank you, Daniela, very much. So do we have some questions from the audience? There is one comment: interesting presentations, greetings from Macedonia. So thank you. I suppose it's also related to the Daniela presentation. And I also have a question for you. Just said to these small grants you are providing to some innovative or scaling up some existing tools. Do you have some plan already now for the next year that we can inform people here when it's usually, opened? And
yeah, we don't have a plan yet, but we normally have it running up until February, but this year we kind of delayed it due to the pandemic, and we closed it in May. So when we start advertising for it,